Hello, I'm making this video to demonstrate a couple of Final Cut Pro X bugs. This is 10.4.1. One of the bugs has been around, I believe, as long as Final Cut Pro X has. I've reported it a few times, but Apple has not deemed it worthy to address. The second bug appears to be related to this first bug, and the second bug can be a bit nastier. So let me start by showing you the first bug. And the first bug is that all video elements should start and stop on frame boundaries. And for some reason, Final Cut Pro X has a bug whereby certain still images can end up starting and stopping not on frame boundaries. So for instance, you'll notice here where I've got the line where my current time is, these two video tracks are starting and stopping right at that boundary. But if you notice just below these two still images, you'll see that they are right in between. I'll move my mouse to where the boundary is between the two items, but if you'll see, it's actually at a boundary in between a valid frame boundary of when frames should start and stop at, on a 30 frame per second timecode base or 29.7 timecode base. That's minor inconvenience in that if you dump 2 frames down and then you later decide to crossfade between them, you can't necessarily do it because they aren't ending up on the same frame boundary. Final Cut Pro doesn't allow you to edit them in this way, but sometimes when you relink files, it will shift the timecodes, or sometimes if you replace files, it'll do the same thing. So for instance, these frames here are frames that were generated by Apple's own Keynote application. And I will edit them into the timeline and they'll be on correct boundaries. But then if I take Keynote and render out a new set of those same files, so the resolution hasn't changed, the naming hasn't changed, I've just overwritten with some changes to the content inside the frames. For some reason then Final Cut Pro X is shifting the timecodes a little bit so they're no longer starting and stopping on the frame boundaries. This can also happen if you were to render out those frames in another application, and then if they have the same file names, you drop them on top of the old ones to replace the old ones. Again, they can be the same resolution, same image format, file format, but for some reason when you do this, Final Cut Pro X will shift timecodes of these frames so they're no longer aligned to proper frame boundaries. And you get this little weirdness that I've been showing you here. So that's the first bug. Now, the second bug is related to moving storylines when you're using such items. I'm going to shift out a bit so you can see a bit more what I'm talking about. I've got a project here, a couple of projects actually, and if I were to take a storyline with 2 images that are connected, again not aligned to frame boundaries, like this, and I'll go ahead and just shift it straight down. I'm going to hold the shift key so nothing's supposed to be moving. Okay, and I'm going to do the same thing in this other edit. It's got the same issue. Again, I'm going to take a storyline with 2 frames cross-faded between each other, and I'm going to just drag it down, holding the shift key. Now everything seems fine. The durations of the edits hasn't changed at all. But if I go ahead and quit Final Cut, wait a second for it to spin the beach ball, and then I'm going to relaunch it. Now, initially looking at the projects in the browser, they'd seem fine, but you'll notice the timecodes have gone to 0. The durations of them has gone to 0. If I open one up, and you can see everything, you can see the storyline with the 2 connected frames that were not on the frame boundaries that I've moved down. Everything's still there. If I click into that, you can see the media, but again, the duration of the whole edit is 0, and it doesn't matter if I've selected, ins, an in or out for the whole thing. It's still doing that. Same thing if I go into the other project here. again, it's showing duration. I can see everything, and if I set an in and an out, it doesn't matter again. The duration is still going to show as 0. And the real problem is, you can't export a timeline, or excuse me, a project that has a 0 duration. You can go into the file menu and select share and export something, but it'll only export a single frame, probably the very first frame, the black frame of the edit, because it thinks for some reason this edit is now 0 duration. So now your project is entirely useless. And that's, again, happened because I've just moved a storyline that has graphic images that are starting and stopping on non-valid frame boundaries. So I really hope Apple would finally address this bug, and I hope that you guys haven't gotten bit by yourselves. Thanks.